this Discovery video, we take a look at the song called Sledgehammer from Peter Gabriel. It was released in 1986. In fact, when it was released, it was nominated for 3 Grammy Awards for Best Rock Vocal Performance, Record of the Year, and Song of the Year. It was kind of revolutionary when it came out. It's been described as a combination of dance rock, blue-eyed soul, and funk, and I think that pretty much sums it up. It's an interesting song by Peter Gabriel. And for those of you who don't know who Peter Gabriel was before he was Peter Gabriel, he was Peter Gabriel, the lead singer of Genesis, which is one of my favorite bands, right up there with Yes and Rush. This song's music video won a record 9 MTV Video Music Awards, again, sort of way ahead of its time. So it begins with a shakuhachi flute, which is a Japanese flute, and it sounds a little like this. A very pretty instrument. Interesting. In fact, let's talk about that intro sound. It features a synthesized shakuhachi flute generated with an EMU Emulator 2 sampler, which was a sampler keyboard of the time. This keyboard was manufactured by EMU Systems from 1981 until the 1990s. Though not the first commercial sampler, the emulator was among the first to find wide use among ordinary musicians due to its relatively low price and fairly contained size, which allowed for its use in live performances. It was also innovative in its integration of computer technology. Now for the verses, Gabriel said that the, quote, cheap organ sound comes from an expensive Prophet 5 synth. Which he regards as an old warhorse sound tool. Prophet 5 synth is beloved today. We're imitating that with a Farfisa here on the Nord Stage 3. Now another piece of interesting trivia, Sledgehammer is Gabriel's only US #1 hit, and it replaced Invisible Touch by his former band Genesis, coincidentally, which was that group's only #1 US hit. Sledgehammer also achieved success on other Billboard charts in 1986, spanning the album Rock Tracks, 2 weeks at the Summit in May and June. It ended up being #4 in the UK. Alright, so that's the lore of the song. Now I've got it loaded here on the Stage 3, and it requires 2 programs. Let me explain each one. So to tackle the Sledgehammer song, I've got 2 programs, Sledgehammer and Sledgehammer 2. On Sledgehammer, the first, if you will, on panel A, on the synth engine, I have shakuhachi Japanese flute. And this sample comes from someone courtesy of the Nord User Forum. I grabbed that sample and put it here in a program that I'm calling Sledgehammer. And this program has on panel A, the shakuhachi, or more legato. And then on panel B, it has this Farfisa organ, which is used for the verses. You'll see that in a second. But hidden and sneaking below the decks we have on panel B, which is off by default, the brass section, which we need to incorporate also in the verses for those little lead lines that happen. Now that's Sledgehammer 1, and you'll be hanging out most of the time in Sledgehammer 1, but there's some key moments in the song where you need the really big brass, and that's what's going to be called Sledgehammer 2, and this entire program is designed for the biggest brass possible, and it also requires a volume pedal, in my opinion. So you want to get the Yamaha FC7. That's one example of a volume pedal. I'll put a link in the description. That's the one I use. I've got 2 of them. I've been using them now for 5 or 6 years straight, almost daily, and they're just rock solid pedals. But a pedal with your Nord, in this case, is really vital. So you see, when I have the pedal all the way down, my volume is about halfway. As I move the volume, the pedal all the way forward, pushing forward on the pedal, the volume now is full. When you come to the big brass at the very beginning, right after the shakuhachi flute, you'll be playing these notes, and I recommend you do both hands. But based on the way the key is for this song, it's really difficult, at least for me, to play this in octaves. Let me just slow it down. And obviously, I'll be practicing it more and getting it better. But it requires the Vulcan spread over here with the left hand as you do this. The right hand is not so bad because you get a naturally big gap here between the second and third finger, so it rests nicely on these black keys. But the left hand does not. The ring finger does not want to go that far. It wants to hang out over here. So to play that, it's... Now that volume is really about halfway on the pedal. Then you can incorporate then full volume for the E flat stab. What a sound. And my secret to that sound, besides using 2 panels for the brass, is on panel A, you see I sneak in an organ here, and just by itself the organ sounds like this. Whoops. That's it. But that holds down. When you have that in the background of the brass, that's my trade secret. That holds the brass and brings out the best of it. So now when you play with 2 brass parts and an organ part on panel A, it sounds like this. You can't even hear the organ unless you're really listening for it. But it rounds that sound out and gives you those tonalities that low trombones would have, which is essential sometimes. So if you play with on octaves. Wow. All right. Now, as the song progresses, you'll go back to Sledgehammer and do the interesting organ, but it works perfectly for the song. Now, I'm using a Farfisa, which is not exactly like the album, but it, without sacrificing yet another synth panel to get some form of a sample or some other closer representation, I'm just using the Farfisa because we get it for free because we have the organ engine. And then I have a little Easter egg here. I snuck in on panel B a brass just to get you by on those verses so you don't have to move too much. And you can just do. You probably could do this. But be careful because the shakuhachi is hanging out here, so you want to stay away from that during those verses. Don't do what I do. All right, now that's for the verses. And then you just hang back and do that again. Whoops, but you take off the brass. All right, now as the big brass comes up, yeah, it starts on G. You can even omit this hand if you are uncomfortable playing in octaves, or if you just don't want to hear those high notes, you can do it. Technically on the album, it's more down here. And I add in the left hand just because it's so big. You could stick to here too. That's powerful there. Then there's one part in the song where it plays the shakuhachi flute along with the brass, and that's really hard to duplicate to get that beautiful big brass and the shakuhachi at the same time because we just don't have the panels and layers to do it. So for that, I do go back to Sledgehammer 1, and I have my... And then I just add the brass here, which is on panel B. It has a line that goes down there. the flute comes in 4 more times, and then you have to play it with brass. And then the rest of the song you can hang out in Sledgehammer 2, because I think you're done with the organ at that point for the verses. I think at that point you're just kind of letting the song climax and also fade out at the end. So then you could just hang here and play your brass. Now this brass sound on Sledgehammer 2, you'll find you can use it for all kinds of things. When you're looking for that powerful brass, not the cheesy type of brass that we typically get with keyboards, but that powerful brass, in order to pull this off, you really do need to have, the octaves going. So I encourage you to practice your octaves. I did that a lot in college and music school, and I never majored in piano. I majored in saxophone. So I'm not really a piano player in the traditional sense, the formal sense, but I did a lot of work with octaves. And when you do octaves on this, all right, hopefully that gets you further along in your sledgehammer needs. I know it's a big request that a lot of people want to play this song, both in cover bands, and they want to figure out the best way to imitate it. This is my way. If you've got a better way and you can lead us into the promised land and show us, either give us sounds that are better than this or lead us to a way that we can do it better, short of using more keyboards and 2 keyboard players, we would appreciate that. Thanks, as always, for watching.